Brazil, a country of both the superlative and also amazing contrast, with dynamic metropolises, cultural centres and untouched nature. It's the largest country on the South American continent. We begin our journey in Rio De Janeiro, secret capital of Brazil. A veritable firework display of unashamed joie de vivre, football, samba and religion. The focal point of today's Rio is the monumental glass cone of the Catedral Metropolitana. It measures 80 meters high and looks like a Mexican pyramid. One of the city's modern sacred buildings. The Nossa Senhora de Candelaria Church was once the city's largest religious building. This splendid church was built above a former chapel. Its exterior contains elements of Baroque and Renaissance design, with an elegant classical interior. The Rua Do Ouvidor, with its elegant old buildings and splendid shops, is a reminder of the city's historical and commercial importance. Portuguese settlers founded the city, and sugarcane and gold made Rio's colonial rulers extremely rich. Various religious orders also settled in Rio and had numerous churches and monasteries built. From here, they spread the word of Christianity to the indigenous population. Sao Bento is particularly well known. The center of Rio is a fascinating combination of both old and new. Colonial architecture mixed with contemporary skyscrapers. A fine example is Praça Floriano, with all of its somewhat extravagant neoclassical buildings. In 1763, Rio was made the capital of Brazil, and it was also the country's most important harbour. It was then that districts such as Lapa originated, with a huge aqueduct that supplied fresh water to the region. Colourful steps and steep, cobbled, winding alleys lead to the colourful and picturesque Santa Teresa district. It's also possible to get there by an atmospheric old tram, the Bonde. One of the city's many harbours is the Marina da Gloria. From here, there are many boat trips that travel along the city's coastline. We pass beneath the mighty Ponte Rio Niterói and the tiny Fiscal Island with its fairy tale castle in which the last glamorous ball of empire once took place. Our journey on the Teleférico cable car is about to begin to Rio's main landmark. Pau d'Açúcar, lovingly known as Sugarloaf Mountain. The first section leads to the Morro da Urca. Since 1913, a second line has travelled up the 394-metre-high rock at the entrance to Guanabara Bay. Up here, the views are truly fascinating. The city's beaches are world famous and the focus of everyday life, such as the Copacabana, the biggest city beach in the world. Today, a gigantic stage for body culture. Here, everyone wants to be seen. The 141-hectare Jardim Botanica contains more than 7,000 varieties of plant. At the beginning of the 19th century, the Portuguese king Dom João VI had the botanical garden created in order to cultivate tropical plants for the European motherland. Yet another famous beach, Ipanema, a meeting place for the rich and famous. Rio's beaches are a major attraction and freely accessible. The Cosme Velho district around the Lago Boticario is an old and enchanting part of the city. Colourful colonial houses flank the square. Everything looks dusty, almost neglected, and asleep. Close by is the station and museum of Ferro Corcovado that leads almost to the top of the famous volcanic rock. The train climbs slowly up the mountain through the biggest urban jungle in the world. It gradually approaches the miracle of Rio that crowns the mountain. The station is squeezed in between forest and slopes. Just a few more steps, and a little further on a moving staircase. Cristo Redentor, Redeemer of the world, embraces the entire city. An overwhelming and touching sight. Its head is almost 4 meters high, and the length of one hand measures over 3 meters. It has a total weight of 1,145 tons. The planning of this symbol of Christianity began in 1921 to mark Brazil's 100 years of independence from Portugal. It took 10 years to complete. Christ looks down upon his people protectively, and upon a metropolis that celebrates fun and happiness from one day to the next. Rio de Janeiro, the Cidade Maravilhosa, a fascinating metropolis full of contrast and a most alluring dream destination. A boat trip leads to one of the most beautiful islands in Brazil, the Ilha Grande, once a pirate stronghold. Pirates came here from France, England, Spain, the Netherlands, Argentina, and Portugal. They plundered the Portuguese caravels. That were full of gold and diamonds from the colonies, a prized booty for the pirates who were afraid of nothing. Today, the island is a small, natural paradise with varied flora and fauna. Sandy beaches flanked with palm trees and neat little buildings. The splendor of the flowers and blossoms even manages to outshine the beautiful remote bays that are full of romance. In the 20th century, the island was used as a prison, so it remained mostly unspoiled. In former times, the coastal towns were protected by fortresses and cannons. Paraty was one of those romantic places south of Rio on the Costa Verde, a gem dating back to Brazil's colonial times. Paraty owed its prosperity to the gold and diamonds that were brought here by mule from the interior. From here, they were shipped to Portugal. The neoclassical Igreja dos Remedios on the Praça de Matriz dates back to 1873 and was once for whites only. The Guayana Indios lived in this region. They sold timber and spices to the first European seafarers that came here. The region was said to have a therapeutic climate, So infirm Indios from the surrounding area came here and settled, hoping to recover. Paraty was founded in 1660, and in the 18th century enjoyed much importance and prosperity. However, following the Declaration of Independence in 1822, the export of gold to Portugal came to an end. Paraty fell into oblivion, but its many beautiful buildings survived the test of time, such as the Catholic Igreja de Santa Rita. For a good insight into the city's history, we visit Petropolis, the old emperor's city located around 66 kilometers north of Rio de Janeiro. Here in the mountains of Serra Petropolis, the emperors of Brazil had their summer residences. Although the former summer palace, the Palacio Imperial, is a splendid building, it looks somewhat modest considering that it was once the residence of emperors. Until the end of the monarchy and the declaration of the Republic in 1889, the country was ruled each summer from this palace, until the emperor was forced into exile in Europe. Horse carriages transport visitors along a canal to the Palacio de Cristal that was originally designed as a conservatory, but was actually used as a ballroom, a construction of glass and metal made in France and transported to Brazil. This splendid, partly cobbled street is divided in two by a slow-flowing water canal. The Serra dos Hogares Nature Park that borders Petropolis was founded in 1939 and extends to as far as Teresópolis. A place so different from the region's tropical beaches and Amazonian jungle. The landscape is reminiscent to that of Europe. Brazil has always been associated with coffee. Fazenda da Taquara is a typical coffee plantation with a well-maintained main building. Original furniture, pictures and documents are exhibited here. Its sixth generation of farmers are proud of the values and traditions of their ancestors. Coffee, the black gold, was exported around the world. The first coffee plants were planted in 1805, and in 1893 about 167 million kilograms of coffee was being exported. Huge coffee plantations originated, and the coffee barons who controlled thousands of slaves became incredibly rich. The small town of São del Rei was founded during the gold rush and was once the main setting of the Emboabas Wars. The local train line is still famous today. It was built at the command of Emperor Pedro II and travels towards Tiradentes. The oldest working steam engine in the world is the Maria Fumaça. It takes 35 minutes to travel a distance of 12 kilometers. In an otherwise hectic world, each of the passengers is relaxed and content by the time they reach Tiradentes station due to the slow pace of the journey. Tiradentes was originally a gold prospectors town, and its present inhabitants attempt to present it to the many tourists who come here as a colonial town by using traditional horse-drawn carriages. This fine town, with its narrow alleys and small buildings, has often been used as a backdrop for many historical films that date back to the days of slavery. A well-preserved dwelling house from times gone by now serves as a museum and features the art, furniture and various documents of the 18th century. The imposing Matriz de Santo Antonio Church is one of the most beautiful sacred buildings of this once wealthy region. It features many wooden carvings and gold decoration. The name of this town, situated amid the hills of the Serra de São José, originates from the nickname of José da Silva Xavier. He was born here and later became a martyr in the struggle for liberty. The oldest church in the nostalgic town of Tiradentes was built by slaves in 1708, who also worshipped here. The Mina de Passagem was discovered in 1719 and is said to be the oldest gold mine in Brazil. It is one of the largest of its kind in the world that is open to the public. Tiny wagons transport visitors safely into numerous subterranean passages as deep as 120 meters below the ground. The mine was active in the 18th and 19th centuries. In 1985, it was shut down. Gold brought fortune and power, but also greed, jealousy and unrest. In the end, it was really only the crown that profited. Around 500 kilometers north of Rio De Janeiro, deep within the Brazilian state of Minas Gerais, is a most remarkable place. Ouro Preto was discovered at the end of the 17th century by Portuguese gold prospectors. They discovered black gold, which changed color due to its iron content. So a prosperous gold town was born, with fascinating Baroque and Rococo architecture that has survived right up to the present day. The area was granted city status, and as a capital city, consequently had much influence over the history of the region. During the gold rush, the population grew to more than 80,000, and at that time the town was larger than New York. The region's substantial mineral resources helped to create the magnificent buildings that can still be seen today. The Igreja de São Francisco de Assis was one such masterwork. In Ouro Preto, the architectural skill of one man was particularly striking, Antonio Francisco Lisboa. And the painter, Manuel de Costa Verde. Good town planning was also a feature of the Brazil of colonial times. This gave rise to one of the most richly adorned churches in Brazil. Francisco Xavier de Brito assisted with the wood carvings. The source of Ouro Preto's gold became exhausted in around 1800, and the building boom came to an end. But the treasures created by human hand live on, and are now the fabulous legacy of a truly golden past. Well sheltered, the culturally most interesting historic city in Brazil nestles in a calm bay alongside the Atlantic Ocean. Salvador de Bahia, former capital of the Portuguese colonies. Amerigos Vespucci was the first to discover this bay that was flanked by dense vegetation on the 1st of November, 1501. Up until 1763, Salvador de Bahia was the capital of Brazil, and its wealth was derived from tobacco, sugarcane, and cocoa. It was only later that the profitable slave trade began here. The Franciscan order commenced with the religious education of the Tupinamba Indians. And in addition to feudal civic buildings, a splendid monastery and church were also built here. On the Praça de Sé, the center of the old colonial town, the Jesuit order built a large cathedral in the 17th century, whose internal walls and pillars consist of light marble. The main altar has been carved from wood and is adorned with an abundance of gold leaf. The 72-meter-high elevator, the Elevador Lacerda, connects the Baroque upper part of the town with the lower part. In the old town, there's nothing to indicate the slave markets of bygone days and the degrading treatment suffered by both African and indigenous Indian slaves. The Forte Santo Antonio de Barra towers mightily over the Atlantic Ocean, and its statues are a reminder that the slaves remained faithful to their African culture and beliefs despite converting to Christianity. Here, Brazil unites with Africa. Indeed, Salvador de Bahia is a melting pot of various cultures, a fine town for its former white colonial masters, and a living space for African gods. Olinda is one of the best preserved colonial towns in Brazil. It was once the capital of the federal state of Pernambuco on the Atlantic coast, and in 1982 was designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. Churches such as the Igreja Sayal cover the slopes. They're protected monuments and have transformed Olinda into an open-air museum. The first Portuguese immigrants were excited about this wonderful location when they landed here in 1535. They were followed by priests and monks. They built churches and monasteries within the palm groves on the hills, and this presented them with a marvelous view of the sea. The Rua do Amparo has been beautifully renovated, and its buildings shine out brightly. The small colonial buildings accommodate artists' ateliers and galleries. They feature mainly modern Brazilian art. Olinda is known as the Pearl of Brazilian Baroque. A special gem of colonial architecture is the Igreja do Carmo, the oldest Carmelite church building in Brazil. The dominant Convento de São Francisco is situated on a hill. It is framed by palm trees and features a wonderful view across the blue Atlantic Ocean. It is the oldest sacred building of the Franciscan order in Brazil. Typical Portuguese two-story arcades surround the tranquil inner courtyard of the famous monastery. The blue-colored walls of the arcades create a contemplative atmosphere. The Capela de São Roque is crowned by a painted and highly detailed ceiling. Olinda is a fine example of colonial splendor and sacred art. Manaus, the capital of the Brazilian federal state of Amazonas, lies in the north of Brazil, on the banks of the Rio Negro. It was rubber that made the city prosper at the end of the 19th century. A symbol of those glorious times is the opera house, the Teatro Amazonas. Manaus had electric street lighting even before London, and an electric tram before both Brussels and Boston. At that time, it was the most prosperous city in South America. From here, explorers ventured further into the wilderness by boat. Even today, the Amazonians travel by boat as the rivers serve as roads through the jungle. They come to Manaus to replenish their food and general supplies and then return to the jungle. The vegetable and fish market are located at the harbour. The historic Alfandega Custom House was prefabricated in England and assembled here. The huge cathedral was constructed during the rubber boom because the rich wanted to show off their wealth. The citizens knew how to enjoy life, and those who couldn't afford a magnificent residence lived in the smart houses of the old town that have since been colourfully renovated. The Palacio Rio Negro is one of the best preserved villas. In 1913, an eccentric German rubber baron had it built. Up until the time when the demand for natural rubber came to an end, the city's inhabitants lived a prosperous life. In today's world, an expedition on an Amazonias boat into the depths of the rainforest must surely be one of the most thrilling experiences available. Following a welcoming drink, the tour guide explains the planned route and shows us the huge Amazon basin on a map. A journey of several days upstream on the Rio Negro, one of the region's main rivers. A journey that leads us into the exciting world of Amazonia. The word Amazonias describes the entire river system of this region. A self-contained system of more than 1,100 inlets supply the Amazon, the Spanish and Portuguese word for Amazonias, as well as water from the surrounding mountains. This is the world's most varied ecosystem, and it provides a habitat for millions of plants and many still unknown animal species. After the trip, a tasty-smelling buffet awaits us on board because traveling through the jungle creates a large appetite. We have reached the Anavilhanas Archipelago, the largest freshwater archipelago on Earth. A huge complex of 350 islands amid the Rio Negro, about 80 kilometers west of Manaus. Slowly, late afternoon turns into evening. The confusion of green is transformed into an optical paradise. At least for us, as we remain here only for a short time. The next morning awakes and features an enchanting fairy tale landscape. In the silence of the early morning, we're led through a confusion of small islands, in search of the best spot for piranha fishing. A 30-centimeter long predatory fish with razor-sharp teeth. We patiently attempt to catch one. The continuing journey is a reminder of the Portuguese who claimed the land upriver from here. We're going to visit a village of the indigenous people of this area, ancestors of the Indian tribes who were discovered during the conquest of this region. The government assists these people to maintain their habitat. With our heads full of the day's activities, we return to the boat. A leap in time to the third millennium. After a short, refreshing bath, we continue our journey and soon reach the Rio Areo, one of the many tributaries of the Amazon system. Again, we make an excursion by small boat. We've come to see the Boto, a pink freshwater Amazonian dolphin. Cameras are at the ready. But only monkeys can be spotted in the dense vegetation on the banks. Evening gradually sets in. As the next morning breaks, we're on the Lago January. Here grow Amazonia's water lilies with their huge blossoms and leaves. The last section of the river journey leads us to the Encontro das Aguas. Here, the black waters of the Rio Negro meet with the cream-colored waters of the Rio Solimões. In Manaus, we set foot once again on land. After our excursion into a tropical wonderworld, we return to civilization. Brasilia, Brazil's new capital city, constructed in the 1950s as a futuristic city. A veritable playground for both planners and architects. At that time, newly elected President Juscelino Kubitschek proclaimed that the construction of Brasilia, 1,000 kilometers north of Rio de Janeiro, was to symbolize his term of office. Oscar Niemeyer was chosen to design the buildings. As a modern religious building, the cathedral is considered to be a masterwork. Figures of the apostles occupy the pathway that leads to the underground entrance of what appears to be an inordinately large circular tent fashioned as a crown of thorns. This, the largest house of God in this utopian city, is more than 30 meters high. The Congresso Nacional is the city's most famous building complex, a dome and bowl linked by two towers. Concrete, glass, water. Identical architectural structures, the story of a visionary dream. However, the architecture also possesses an orderly and practical character. It took just 4 years for this city that represents both efficiency and modernity to be stamped into what had been an untouched wilderness, with unstinting effort by both builders and civil engineers. President Kubitschek finally implemented a plan that had been written into the Constitution since 1891. Lucio Costa's model of the city is on public view, the concept with which he won the competition. For the test tube city, the city of hope. Brasilia was created, a monument to a foregone future. Cuiaba is a metropolis of the third largest federal state in Brazil. The first impression is of a modern city. However, the old town has retained its character of old, with narrow lanes, small, colourful buildings, a natural image of bygone times. The former gold prospectors town that was established around the spring of Carrego de Parainha Creek has been transformed into a lively city. In 1727, Miguel Sutil discovered a large quantity of gold here. Indeed, his find created a gold rush. Then came the first bandeirante, pioneers who came here with the intention of making a quick fortune in the Wild West. However, their efforts were in vain. Later, Mato Grosso became known as the final frontier, and people from each corner of Brazil settled here. Unspoiled, free land that promised easy money to those who were strong and courageous enough. The region has always been inhabited. The Catholic Church has been particularly active here. At the junction of the water-rich lowlands and the arid high plains, the town of Cuiaba grew and grew. North of Cuiaba is Chapada dos Guimarães, a national park founded in 1989 that features steep-sloped table mountains. It is Brazil's Wild West, whose earthiness and mystical scenery curls around the geodetic center of South America. Salvador, an area of rest and relaxation, can today be found at the foot of the mesas. In bygone days, merchants with heavily laden donkeys gathered here to salt meat and dry it in the sun. At first, small streams flowed down from the mountains. Suddenly, and without warning, their water masses plunge unexpectedly and dramatically into the abyss below. 500 million years ago, the area was covered with a thick sheet of ice. Later, a sea extended across it, followed by desert. Many small and larger waterfalls give the scenery a sense of mystique. There's so much here to be discovered. Flowers and blossoms in exotic colors transform the mountain backdrop. An area of prehistory on the border of the Amazon basin. The only route from here into the southern lowlands of Mato Grosso is to Cuiaba, and from there into an almost uninhabitable land of water. The Pantanal. Located within the watery lowlands, this is the South American continent's largest wildlife paradise, covering an area half the size of Germany. The name Pantanal is derived from the Portuguese word pantano, which means swamp or quagmire. In actual fact, it's a marshland area. In addition to indigenous birds, migratory birds also come here. There's even a main road that travels 149 kilometers across this wilderness and over 126 wooden bridges. The Trans-Pantanaira. Along the banks of the causeway, caimans are visible, which during the day lie motionless in the sun. A special attraction here are the capybara, or water pigs, the world's largest rodent. Water pigs are generally timid creatures, although there can be times when a capybara can be fearless and stubbornly claims the road for itself. Between trees and shrubs and a sea of flowers and blossoms, waterfowl go in search of breakfast and strut through countless fields of water. Wildlife enjoy this Noah's Ark of South America. The hours of morning in this wonderful natural landscape help us to forget the outside world. And the area is also free of ecotourism. Amid this natural, primeval landscape, those who come here can experience the full magic of nature. Pantanal is the largest natural paradise on the South American continent. Wooden pathways lead off the road into a wilderness in which the bird life is secure. Watchtowers have been built for visitors to the eco-farms. Various groups of monkeys have come to relax here. They seem to freeze in the cool of the morning. Without much curiosity, they gaze at visitors while awaiting the warmth of the first sunshine of summer. One of the few side roads leads past a watchtower. Up in the trees, monkeys can be observed. They balance artistically on thin branches in order to grasp hold of a tasty snack. To tend to their livestock, the Pantaneiros ride across the land on horseback. This is the only practical means by which they can travel across forests, open country, and tropical marshland. Along the region's many rivers and waterfalls, the canoe has proved itself to be the best method by which visitors can enjoy this remote area. A huge fish otter hungrily consumes its delicious breakfast. A natural paradise within a watery wilderness in which the remarkable diversity of bird life is almost without equal. Even today, Mato Grosso and the Pantanal are the wild west of Brasilia. Yet this former Indian tribal land has become inhabited and reclaimed. However, it is still a natural paradise on earth. The waterfalls of Iguazu are one of the most impressive natural wonders of our planet, as well as providing a natural border between two countries. In the middle of this gigantic natural spectacle is the dividing line between Argentina and Brazil, unique on the South American continent. The Rio Iguazu has its source in the Serra do Mar. On its 1,300-kilometer journey, it is fed by 30 tributaries. Here, the play of color is quite magical. The reddish-brown water has transformed into white spray that sparkles in the sunlight in all the colors of the rainbow. Rio Iguazu rumbles through the rainforest and finally crashes down over rock walls into the depths below. A great climax to its long journey. The locality is well organized, and each year millions of visitors make their way along several wooden pathways to the waterfalls. In the last century, national parks were established on each side of the waterfall. Roaring curtains of water, thunderous noise, glittering spray. And all this is created by the mighty, natural wonder of the Iguazu waterfalls. Sao Paulo is one of the megacities of the 21st century, with a population of 20 million. It is the economic heart of Brazil. The railway helped to transport cotton and later coffee. And its large station with British-designed clock tower became an important symbol. Each free space is filled with brand new skyscrapers. Never-ending traffic and constant hubbub dominate the life of the Paulistas. Within the old town is the Catedral Metropolitana that dominates the square. In 1913, work began and 800 tons of marble were used in its construction. The area between the two towers provides space for almost 8,000 people, a mixture of neo-Gothic and Renaissance architecture. Outside the cathedral is a monument of the Jesuit Anchieta. The Patio do Collegio was the location where the city was founded by a padre who established a monastery and church here. Today the streets are busy and noisy, but at that time there were just a few tiny huts and some visionary Jesuits. Their aim was to convert the indigenous inhabitants to Catholicism, and they succeeded. Thus, Sao Paulo became a city of contrasts, of deeply religious Catholics, and also the poorest of the poor. The Benedictines were also active in Brazil, and Mosteiro de São Bento became their main settlement. Indeed, the Pope visited this monastery and blessed the people from its balcony. From all over the country, people visit this place, and often they perform music and dance from their local areas. Such as this group from Salvador de Bahia that performs old slave dances. A battle disguised as a lively dance. Sao Paulo's economy beats to the pulse of its stock market. Here, everything is bigger and better. The city is almost bursting at the seams. The Japanese community is the biggest outside Japan. Most of the Japanese live in the Liberdade district, south of the city centre. A red Japanese archway indicates the main street with its splendid array of shops and restaurants. The Avenida Paulista is Sao Paulo's magnificent avenue. Flanked by skyscrapers, it is the financial center of South America, an imposing canyon of glass and concrete. The city's most sought-after address. Only a few palaces of the city's former coffee barons still exist. In 1891, the first paved street originated here, in which today towering offices alternate with contemporary buildings. Due to rapid economic growth, the asset moved from the former city centre to this noble address. Therefore, only a few luxurious villas have survived and have today been transformed into museums. In contrast to their modern surroundings, it is the old buildings that are the most striking. From the roof terrace of the highest building, the number of skyscrapers seems to be endless. It's an impressive picture of a futuristic ocean of stone, glass, and concrete. A gigantic megacity. A city that is constantly growing, with new highways and modern bridges that span various canals. A melting pot of Brazil's economy. New districts, such as Zona Sul, seem to have sprung up from nowhere. This new economical and financial center is growing at rapid pace. New roads, such as the Avenida Borini, suddenly appear. And in the attendant new buildings, the further economic development of the country is being administrated. Green areas such as the Parque do Ibirapuera provide a welcome leisure space within the metropolis. A huge area with a lake and Brazilian forest. At weekends, the park is transformed into a huge sport and leisure area. Outside the city gates, a stone monument is dedicated to the Bandeirantes, brave adventurers who discovered Brazil and explored the Amazonias in their search for gold and diamonds. Brazil is synonymous with sunshine, samba, and exotic nature. A dream destination full of both adventure and joie de vivre.